in a struggle as old as time. There are two religions, destined for a conflict. This conflict will be unlike anything ever seen. What will happen? Discover the Bible Prophecy. Islam and Christianity, a Bible Prophecy Seminar by Tim Rosenberg.
Welcome to Presentation 2, The King of the North, the Little Horn, and the Beast. So far, what we have in our study on Daniel 11 is it goes from Daniel's time to the end of sin and suffering to God's kingdom. The king of the north and the king of the south go through phases. We have a Greek north and a Greek south and a Roman north and a Roman south. And we found that Jesus is the Prince of the Covenant. But remember, whenever the current king of the north attacks a rising power and loses, we have a transition from one north to the next one. Well, think about the cross. Rome attacks Jesus, right? And on Friday, it looked like Jesus lost. I mean, the one who dies usually the loser. But then 100 Roman soldiers are given this really, really easy weekend duty of keeping him dead man dead for 3 days. All they have to do is keep him dead. What a weekend assignment. They were probably laughing about that one. If he gets up, just grab a spear and put him back down. Yeah, right. But before the weekend was over, things had changed. Saturday went okay for him. Sunday morning, a little before dawn, they had a major problem. There's this flash of light when an angel comes streaking in, and he flicks the stone to the side, and Jesus comes walking out, and these guys fall over as dead men, it says. The thing of it is, they were watching everything that happened, so that means it's like one of those really, really bad dreams. When you see something, you can't say anything, can't move a muscle, but you see it. They're laying on the ground, and Jesus walks by, the light fades, and they get up, and they run to the priest and to Pilate, and you think they were running through town going, "We won, we won." No. When they got to the priest and Pilate, "You guys have a big problem. He's not dead. You killed him. People said he was the Son of God, and he just walked out of the tomb with an angel escort. We got a problem." So Rome attacks Jesus and wins. Rome attacks Jesus and loses. Jesus wins. So, what do we have? We should have a new kingdom coming in the place as the king of the north that has something to do with Jesus. But in Daniel chapter 2, you have legs of iron that go into feet of iron and clay. The iron Rome goes into the next kingdom. So it's going to have something to do with both Jesus and Rome. That's what I know just going into it as we start. So tonight we're looking at the simple question, at least to me a rather simple one. What power follows Rome in Daniel chapter 11? Historically, Rome, like Greece, splits into north versus south. In the Greek split, we had the Seleucids to the north and the Ptolemies to the south, and Jerusalem gets caught in the middle. In the Roman split, we have Christianity north, Islam south, and Jerusalem gets caught in the middle. You have a pattern in the book of Daniel, chapter 11 here. Now, there are three conflicts. All three of them show up in one verse. Daniel 11, verse 29. At the appointed time, he, the king of the north, shall return and go towards the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. So the three conflicts, the former, that's the Crusades. The appointed is the Ottoman Empire. And the latter, the time of the end conflict, where we live now, that is called a whirlwind in Daniel chapter 11. Patrick Buchanan said it this way: as for climatic conflict between a once Christian West and an Islamic world that is growing in numbers and advancing inexorably into Europe for the third time in 14 centuries. Now, Patrick Buchanan was talking about a terrorist event that happened in Norway. But what I want you to notice is what number of conflicts are we in according to history? The third one. In Daniel 11, there are only 3. The third one is the third and final. Now, I wish we weren't headed into a conflict between Islam and Christianity, but the good news is it's the last run. We're going to be done with this. Also, 14 centuries. That takes you back to the breakup of the Roman Empire. If that takes you back to the breakup of Rome, in Daniel, from Rome until the coming of Jesus, are 3 conflicts between the north and the south. And the Christians have the north and the Muslims have the southern part of the Mediterranean. If you know your history, this isn't too hard. So tonight we're looking at this divided Roman Empire and the time of the little horn. It's the time period in which we live. That's why I blew through the whole top of those things. Because I wanted to get to our time period, because most people care more about their time period than history. In Daniel 11, we're looking at the king of the north. That same power is called the little horn in Daniel 7 and 8. That same power is called the man of sin in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. That same power is called the beast in Revelation 13. They're all different names for the same power that emerges from the Roman Empire and extends all the way to Christ's coming. Now, we're going to look at 15 characteristics of this. And we're going to identify it. We're not going to be beating around the bush. I'm going to try and be as respectful as I can, but I won't be politically correct. I guarantee it by the time I'm done tonight. All right? So I will try to be respectful and biblically correct, though, okay? Take a look at what the Bible says, because that's what I care about. In Daniel 11, verse 22, the people and then Jesus are broken, and also the Prince of the Covenant. So that's the time of Jesus in verse 22. Then in verse 23, we have the new power rising that should be connected to both Jesus and Rome. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully. So we have a league being made. Verse 45, at last, that's the last verse of Daniel 11, yet he shall come to his end and no one will help him. So it starts in verse 23 and ends at verse 45. What time is that? The next verse, 12:1, tells us. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. That's when God sets up his kingdom and delivers his people that are caught in the middle. So it starts in the time of Jesus, well, shortly afterwards, comes out in the open when a league is made, and lasts all the way till God's kingdom, the time of divided Rome. The little horn does the same kind of thing. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them. So we have a little horn coming up out of the 10 horns and representing the breakup of the Roman Empire. Verse 11 says, I watched till the beast was slain and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. Verse 26 gives us more about that. And they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever. Then the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. So it starts from Rome, and the divided Roman Empire goes all the way to God's kingdom. The king of the north, the last phase of it, starts from Rome, goes all the way to God's kingdom. They're parallel. That's why they're the same power. The man of sin, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, only he who now restrains will do so until he's taken out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. So what we have here is the mystery of lawlessness was already starting in the first century when Paul writes this. There was a problem developing in Christianity, but it was being held in check by Rome, but a little later it was going to come up in the open and become a real problem, and it was going to last until it was destroyed at the coming of Jesus Christ. All right? Revelation 13, the beast. All kinds of people are worried about the beast and the mark of the beast. Symbolism that God's cartoons got some people's attention. That's what they were supposed to do. Here's what it says. I saw a beast rising up out of the sea having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, like a bear, and like a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. That's straight out of Daniel 7, Babylon, Medo Persia, Rome, and we're headed right into the last time period there. So this is the power coming out from Rome. And I saw the beast, the kings of the earth and their armies, gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. Then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshiped his image. These two were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So it comes from Rome. Rome gives them their authority, and it lasts all the way till Jesus sets up his kingdom and destroys it. So all of these start from Rome and go all the way to God's kingdom. That's a long, long time. Longer than any one person. But there are some systems out there that match. So we're going to be looking and try to figure out who this power is. Well, Luther, Calvin, Wycliffe, the Wesleys, they all taught the same thing, and it wasn't politically correct in their day either, because they and a lot of their followers were persecuted or killed over their identification. They identified this power as the Roman Catholic papal system. Now hear me carefully, not Roman Catholic people, many of which God calls his people in Revelation 18 verse 4. All right? Let me say it another way. I don't want you leaving this place thinking that I'm thinking that there won't be Catholics in heaven. I actually believe there will be more former Catholics in heaven than former anything else. There'll be some former Adventists, some former Baptists, some former Pentecostals, former all kinds of things in heaven. But there'll be more former Catholics than any of the rest, because there's been more of them for more years. All right? Notice I'm calling them all formers. Because in heaven, we're simply going to be God's kids. And that's really good. But the papal system has been guilty of human rights violations for centuries, and the Catholic people have often been the victims of those human rights violations. And God himself says he has a people in the system. So does the papacy fit? Oh, first century. How many powers do we have around the earth today that were in existence in the first century? Not too many, right? But does the papacy claim its roots right back into the first century? Yes, they do. They claim roots all the way into the first century. So yes, it does fit that one. Is it still around? Yes. Does it show any signs of going away too soon? No. So that is a power that has been there. Let's see if it matches the rest of them. The second one is, and after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully. Well, remember, it's going to come out in the open in 2 Thessalonians. A league in Daniel 11 is made. Well, during the first few years of Christianity, pagan Rome persecuted Christians. It was wonderful for Christianity. Yeah, I meant that. You see, for the first 200 or 300 years, Christians were willing to die for Jesus, but not to kill for him. And when they were willing to die for Jesus, the gospel spread all over the world. But then Constantine, in the early 4th century, decided that he was going to fight under the sign of the cross. In other words, become Christian. And he makes a league between Rome and the church. And we end up with the Holy Roman Empire. And now Christians are killing for Jesus, and the mission outreach of the church nearly came to a halt. It wasn't until the 1700s, when the Moravians were ready to die for Jesus again, that the gospel really started spreading again in this world. They were some awesome people, the Moravians. They sent out hundreds of missionaries every year, knowing that 9 out of 10 of them would die in the first year of service. How many of you would take a mission call knowing that you had a 90% chance of dying in the first year? And they sent them out year after year after year. And Christianity began to expand again. You see, Christianity is powerful when Christians care so much about Jesus that they're willing to die for him, but not to kill for him. Find any text in the New Testament where Jesus said to kill anybody for him. You're not finding it. Well, anyway, probably shouldn't have got off on that one, but I did. So we have a league being made. Take a look at Constantine's coin that he minted right after the league was made. In the middle, we have Sol, the sun god. On the right-hand side, we have a sunburst. On the left-hand side, we have the cross. He just took pagan sun worship and Christianity, and he jammed them together and made a political religion out of it, the Holy Roman Empire. And to avoid persecution, the Christians went for it. It wasn't a good deal. But that's exactly what it's saying. And it says when the league is made, they would become deceitful. And so Constantine moves from Rome, and he moves to Constantinople, and he sets up a new capital, and the Pope is left in charge of Rome. But the Pope wants a document that says he's in charge. And so the Donation of Constantine document comes on the scene. And in it, it says the Pope is in charge in Rome, and he can wear scarlet and all this stuff that only the emperors were supposed to wear. It has a whole list of things, except there's this one big problem with it. A couple hundred years later, it was discovered to be a forgery. Google Donation of Constantine. You'll find the whole story of how it was discovered to be a forgery. Let's see. If you base your power to rule in Rome on a forged document that you yourself forged, are you doing it with deceit? Daniel never misses. And the neat thing about Daniel 11, this isn't some kind of conspiracy stuff. It's all open information. It's the big events that it's covering in this. Well, the man of sin in 2 Thessalonians is deceitful too. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. Folks, you don't go by signs and wonders, you go by God's word. Because Satan can work signs and wonders, and God can work signs and wonders, and the only way you're ever going to figure it out is by God's word. So make sure you're using it. Don't believe what I say because I said it. Check it to God's word and find out. That's why we give you those study guides with the verses on it. So if I go so fast, you can still go back and look them up later and check the context. It would start small but powerful. Daniel 11, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. Christianity starts out very small and very weak, but it becomes powerful by the time it links up with Rome. The little horn, another horn, a little one coming up among them, speaking pompous words, starts small but becomes very bold and big. And if you were to go to the Vatican today or tonight, you would find that the Vatican is one of the smallest countries on this earth at just over 100 acres. But you would also find one of the most powerful nations on earth. President Trump made 3 visits on his first world tour, or first world trip. One of them was the Vatican, to visit the Pope. 100-acre nation. Why would the U.S. president go there? Get this. He visited Saudi Arabia, the king of the south, well, not just the king, but a representative of Islam. Then he went to Jerusalem. Then he went to visit the papacy. The players of Daniel 11. Couldn't believe it when I saw the itinerary for his first trip. Well, goes on. It would be peaceable and become rich. He shall enter peaceably even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, the spoil, and the riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds. And so he's going to be peaceable but become rich. Well, folks, if you were to visit the Vatican, you would find a power that without a military of its own has become very rich. If you doubt me, go visit most any city in South America or Mexico. Go to the center of town, you're going to find a cathedral, and in the cathedral you're going to find some fairly ornate art objects, and you go visit the rest of the town and see what it's like. They've become rich all over the world. It has a man at its head. In Daniel 11, it repeatedly talks about a he. In other words, there is a leader for this power. In Daniel 7 and 8, the little horn, and there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, a mouth speaking pompous words. In other words, the little horn is the leader, spokesperson. The man of sin, well, that's a leader of something. And Revelation 13, the beast, and all who dwell on the earth will worship him whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And so, yeah, we have a world leader that would be the representative of the King of the North at any given point. At this moment, it's Francis. Take a look at this Time magazine cover. Did you know this was right when he was elected to become Pope? Did it say a Pope for the Catholic Church? No. Did it say a Pope for Christianity? No. It's a Pope for the New World. The media looks at this guy as probably the primary world leader. and the king of the north from a 100-acre nation starts small and becomes powerful. Well, kind of fits that characteristics pretty well too, doesn't it? It leads attacks against the south. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the Pope calls for the Crusades, and we get a whole series of crusades of Christian nations from around Europe attacking Islam. Then, verse 29, at the appointed time he shall return and go towards the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. So we have these three conflicts. That was the Ottoman conflict that it was mentioning there. So we have three conflicts. Why does the Christian world follow the Pope and the Crusades? Because they're afraid of the spread of a violent form of Islam. Why does the Christian world join with the Pope in the Holy League during the Ottoman Empire? Because they're afraid of a violent spread of Islam. Why would the world follow the papacy at the time of the end? Because they're afraid of the spread of a violent form of Islam. That's right in front of our faces, isn't it? It's right there in history. There are 3 rounds of the same thing happening. I often say, what we're talking about is the elephant in the middle of the room. And once you see it, you'll never unsee it. It's just there. 7th characteristic, a predicted time or 1260-day year rule. In Daniel 11:24, it says that this power would only be in power for a time. It's going to have a time period that it has supremacy. The little horn, it tells us how long it'll be. Then the saint shall be given into his hand for time, times, and half a time. The Hebrew here is a year, 2 years, and half a year. Makes it 3.5 years. Well, look how Revelation records it. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time. So it's obvious that Revelation is tying this together with the book of Daniel, right? That would be 3.5 years. But look, Revelation covers it 2 more ways. Then the woman fled into the wilderness where she is a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. In case your math isn't so good, that's 3.5 years. Here's another way. Then he, the beast, was given authority to continue for 42 months. 42 months is 3.5 years. The Bible is making it clear in multiple ways the time period that this power is in charge. But remember, in Daniel in particular, and this started in Daniel, a day equals a year. And so the 42 months would be actually not 1,260 days, but 1,260 years. And get this. In 538, Vigilus, Justinian's general, Vigilus, the Pope, becomes Pope and gets the papal chair under the military protection of Belisarius, Justinian's general. So, in 538, Emperor Justinian puts the Pope in office as the official leader of all Christianity in the Roman Empire. Actually, he does it in 533, the decree. There's a problem, though. There are some Arian Christians that are followers of a guy by the name of Arius, and they don't believe that the Pope's in charge of everything. And they have control of Rome at the moment. And so the Pope is in charge of all Christianity in the Roman Empire, but he's not welcome in Rome. Isn't that sweet? And so Justinian sends a general in to enforce it, and it's enforced in 538, thus starting the clock of their enforced supremacy with military power. 1,260 years later brings you to 1798, and in that year, Pope Pius VI is imprisoned by Napoleon's general Berthier. In 1798, Berthier made his entrance into Rome, abolished the papal government, and established a secular one in its place. So the papacy has political power, church and state, for 1,260 years. And the world thought that the papacy had come to its end. The Pope dies in captivity. It is the longest time period after that death that there was not a Pope in history. It's a little over a year. And so The world thought the papacy was gone, but in prophecy and Revelation, it says it comes back more powerful than ever. So guess what's going to happen? But during that 1260-year time period, we have all of the Crusades and most of the Ottoman Empire. By the time the 1260 years end, the Ottoman Empire is becoming very weak, and it is no longer a threat. It just hasn't come to its end yet. And so we have the first two conflicts between Islam and Christianity during that 1260 years. Another characteristic is that it would change times or laws or attack God's covenant. In Daniel 11, 28, 30, and 32, it tells us that the king of the north attacks God's covenant. In Daniel 7, the little horn, he shall intend to change times and law. Well, let's take a look at the Catholic documents. I'm not going to what other people are saying. I'm going by what they say. Do they ever claim that they have the power to change God's law? Well, they flat out say they do. Let's look at this one. The Pope is of so great of authority and power that he can modify, change, or interpret even divine laws. The Pope can modify divine law since his power is not of man, but of God, and he acts as vicegerent of God upon earth with most ample power of binding and loosing a sheep. So they flat out said in their own documents that they can change God's law. Now, I do remember that God said that he doesn't change. And so I'm going to stick with his word as my authority. I'm not going to follow any human being on this one. Another one said they changed times and laws. This is a convert's catechism written by Peter Gearman. It's got the imprimatur of the church or approval of the church right in the cover. Question, which day is the Sabbath? Answer, Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer, we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Did you notice any verse in Scripture that they used for that? No. They just flat out said they did it. That's why I'm a Sabbath-keeping Christian. I don't know what you're going to do about it, but I just didn't want to follow the system on that. So, ninth characteristic, speaks great words or blasphemy. Daniel 11, verse 36. Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. Right there, that desire of women, that might even be a reference to the celibacy. That gets debated back and forth, but it could be. But definitely, he's going to put himself above God. Daniel 7, the little horn, he shall speak pompous words against the Most High. 2 Thessalonians 2:4, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Try and keep the picture of that in your mind, and we're going to show you a fulfillment in picture form from Catholic television. Next, Revelation 13, the beast, he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. So these great things and blasphemies are there all the way through. It's the same power. So what would blasphemy be? When a man claims to be God. In John chapter 10, Jesus claimed to be God. They were going to kill him for blasphemy. Except if Jesus is God, it's not blasphemy. Also, they were going to kill him in Mark 2 because he said he could forgive sins. Except if Jesus is God, he can forgive sins. As a matter of fact, I'm counting on it to such an extent, I'm counting on my eternal life on Jesus' ability to forgive sin. I'm putting everything on that one because he is God. Well, does the system or the Pope, is the Pope put in that position? Again, Catholic documents. The Pope is so great of dignity and so exalted that he is not a mere man, but as it were God and the vicar of God. The Pope is called most holy because he is rightfully presumed to be such. He's likewise the divine monarch and supreme emperor and king of kings. That's a title for Jesus. Hence the Pope is crowned with a triple crown as king of heaven and of earth and of the lower regions. So he's not only king of the earth, but he's also king of hell and of heaven. That would mean he could tell God what to do. As a matter of fact, we're going to show you a statement in a little bit that says they can. They claim they can. Catholic National, the Pope is as it were God on earth, sole sovereign of the faithful of Christ, chief king of kings, having plenitude of power. Another one, The Pope is not only the representative of Jesus Christ, but he is Jesus Christ himself, hidden under the veil of the flesh. So you have these kind of statements, and there are lots and lots of them. But I told you that we were going to have a picture. Notice in the bottom left corner, CTV. It wasn't some kind of Protestant program. This was on Catholic television. It said he would be seated in the temple of God as if he were God. In the Old Testament temple, the judgment seat is on the Ark of the Covenant between the two golden cherubim. What's on each side of the throne? Two cherubim, two angels. In the New Testament, when Jesus returns, he's riding on the great white throne, judgment seat. The Pope is seated on a great white throne. In Revelation, around the throne are 4 living creatures. Count the living men on that upper platform. 4 of them. They've combined the imagery of God's throne from Old and New Testament, and they put him in God's place as if he were God, and it matches their statements where they say he is Jesus Christ hidden under the veil of the flesh. But that is only a position for Jesus Christ. So, and by the way, that's Pope Benedict on there. Now, do they claim to be able to forgive sin? Rebutting a belief widely shared by Protestants and a growing number of Roman Catholics, Pope John Paul II on Tuesday dismissed the widespread idea that one can obtain forgiveness directly from God. Really? That's where I go for mine. And he exhorted Catholics to confess more often to their priest. Why would he be saying you've got to go to the priest? This book by Michael Mueller, a Catholic, tells you why. Seek where you will through heaven and earth, and you will find but one created being who can forgive the sinner, who can free him from the chains of hell. That extraordinary being is, and it's not Jesus, is the priest, the Catholic priest. Yes, beloved brethren, the priest raises his hand, he pronounces the word of absolution, and in an instant, quick as a flash of light, the chains of hell are burst asunder, and the sinner becomes a child of God. So great is the power of the priest that the judgments of heaven itself are subject to his decision. Get the implications. If I'm a friend of the priest and I ask to be forgiven, he forgives me even if I wasn't serious, and God has to forgive me. But if the priest doesn't like me, and even if I'm contrite and repentant, and the priest says no, I'm stuck. Except if you know the system, you know how to get around it. By the way, if you can get around it, it's not God's system. I just moved to a different parish. Make friends with the priest, go to the priest and ask for forgiveness, and I get it. Which priest will God obey? You see, there's only one being in the universe that can handle absolute power, and that's God. And if you give absolute power to any human being, I don't care whose church you're in, absolute power absolutely corrupts. And that's what happened in the system. And you can do the same thing in your church if you give too much power, or in your political party, or whatever it is. Only God can handle some things. Don't give God's authority to anyone else. And by the way, there are many Catholics who go straight to Jesus for their forgiveness. Got an email from a professor from a Roman Catholic university one time. He said, I was watching your material online. He said, that second presentation, this one, is kind of hard to take. But there was a smiley face beside it. That got my attention. I wanted to keep reading. He said, but I'm one of those Catholic Christians you talk about that go straight to Jesus for my forgiveness. He knew the difference. God's got a people in that system. Don't ever doubt it. They're there. Well, that papal system would also persecute the saints. Daniel 11:33, it says that people would do great exploits for God, yet for many days they shall fall by sword and by flame. During that time period of the Reformation, the Ottomans, that's the context of verse 33, is when the papacy burned fellow Christians at the stake for following the Bible and not their traditions. Daniel never misses. It's that time period where people were burned at the stake, and that's exactly where he's got it. Daniel 7, he shall persecute the saints of the Most High. Revelation 13, the beast, it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. So yes, through the centuries, millions have died because they have a disagreement with the papacy. Put to death by flame. Why was it so many people fled the old world and came to the new world? So they could have religious freedom, so that they could follow Jesus and the Bible as they read it. And then Pope John Paul recognized these things. It's not just me that finds them. The church admits to it. He urges forgiveness for centuries of wrong. The Catholic Church must mark the year 2000 by acknowledging its members' sins, including intolerance in the name of religion and complicity in human rights crimes. As the second millennium draws to a close, the church should become more fully conscious of the sinfulness of her children, recalling all those times in history when they departed from the Spirit of Christ. He goes on and talks about things like the Inquisition and the Crusades and stuff like that. But I can tell you that I've met Catholic priests since the year 2000 who didn't get the memo. Met them down in South America where they have political power. I was in a country that is Roman Catholic by constitution, which means the priest has both political and religious power in the city. And I and another pastor were doing some meetings there with some other folks, and we were doing Bible presentations in the evening in this little hotel in their meeting room. In the daytime, we were doing a VBS. We were doing health screening and stuff like that. We were having a great time. And the people in that city were flocking out to it. And we found out the priest was upset about it. I didn't talk about this subject. I knew that would be the end of the meeting. But I was just, and the other guy that I was assisting, we were just talking about general Bible stuff. We knew we could get in enough trouble doing that. Here's how we found out we were in trouble. Sometime around 1 or 2 in the morning, 4 men, 3 of them in military garb, 1 of them in a business suit, all of them armed. The 3 military guys were with assault rifles. They showed up at the hotel owner's door, knocked on the door, and she answered the door, and they told her to get her keys, and she's going to go open up the hotel rooms that we're staying in. They missed my room. About half of our team got the visit. They hit my 2 teenage daughters' room. Here's how my daughters woke up. They hear a commotion outside their door, and in Spanish, and they know Spanish, they hear the hotel owner begging, but they're only children, leave them alone. And they hear her commanded to open the door. They hear the keys go in the door opens, and the light comes on. And as they blink, they're realizing they're looking down the barrels of assault rifles as the guys come across the room demanding their passports. My younger daughter pulls the sheets over her head. My older daughter later says, like sheets will stop bullets. And my younger daughter grins and shot right back at the older one, but I'd never see him coming, would I? My daughters both went on mission trips afterwards still. So they got something out of our family anyway. Don't back off just because you're threatened. In the morning, we had a little talk about it. And we were pretty clear because the hotel owner told us the priest was upset with us, and they'd put a seal on the 2 front doors of the hotel that if you broke the seal by opening the door, you would be put in prison. But they left the back door open so we could leave. And so we talked it over, and we gave this message to the hotel owner. Please tell the police, because the 4 men with armed men were police officers, and the priest, because they were sent by the priest, to go tell them that if they want to try that again and have they'll have an international incident on their hands. And in the morning, my wife and I got in a taxi, went down to the U.S. Embassy, made a visit there, never told them what happened overnight. But the people watching us wouldn't know that. We came back to the hotel, and we opened up for a meeting. We opened the back door with somebody out front with a sign that says, the front doors are sealed, but the back door's open. Come on in. We finished the meeting, but never opened the front doors. They took the seal off when we left the hotel. We didn't have any more problems either. Another city a year later, in the same country, I watched a Catholic priest with a bullhorn trying to rile up a mob to get me driven out of town. It's kind of interesting to watch that happening. And The reason that one didn't work, the priest went to the owner, a Catholic businessman who owned the building that we're meeting in, and he said, I'm starting a religious meeting in your meeting hall tonight. Get rid of those evangelicals. Anybody who's not Catholic is just an evangelical. And the Catholic businessman said, but I gave my word. I'm a man of my word, and I never break my word. We finished the meeting because of his word, and he meant what he said. I'm telling you, I believe God has a people in the system too. I've seen him step up under pressure. So I'm just telling you, when they have both political and spiritual power, they'll still use it. I've been on the receiving end a few times. Deadly wound is healed. Well, they got it in 1798, but here's what it says. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and its deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. Well, February 11, 1929, we had newspapers all over the world, the headlines. Here's what the San Francisco Chronicle said. The Roman question tonight was a thing of the past, and the Vatican was at peace with Italy. In affixing the autographs to the memorable document, healing the wound, extreme cordiality was displayed on both sides. Interesting that in 1929, public media would use biblical language to describe the healing of the wound. And once again, the Vatican had political power. Then John Paul II came on the scene. And he brought great power to the church. Charismatic leader that skyrocketed them into prominence. Now we have Pope Francis. Take a look at what the Huffington Post said about him back in 2015. But shrewdly, methodically, and with a showman's flair, the soft-spoken 78-year-old Argentinian Jesuit priest named Pope Francis showed Thursday that he is running to become president of the planet. And they, as a secular group, were ready to endorse him. The secular media loves the guy. Who is it that's considered president of the planet? The King of the North. Revelation says, and all the world follows. Why would they follow him? For the same reason they followed the last two times. They're afraid of a violent strain of Islam. Other characteristics that come up. The 10 horns, this is from Daniel 7, talking about the little horn. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another one shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. In Daniel 11, the king of the north is both political and religious. After the time of Jesus, it's political and religious. Before the time of Jesus, it was just political in Daniel 11. So it takes a change, and the king of the north not only leads in real wars, but it also attacks the covenant of God and the people of God. And when you take a look at the breakup of the Roman Empire, the area controlled by the papacy, it split into what were called 10 barbarian tribes. 3 of them were eliminated, though, the Heruli, the Ostrogoths, and the Vandals. Why were they eliminated? They were those that were following Arius. They didn't believe the Trinity the same way the papacy taught it, and for that they were eradicated to make room for the papacy. So again, Daniel's prophecy matches history. Characteristics number 14, a lot of people get excited about this one, but it's probably one of the least important of the whole bunch. All of them are important in this sense. How many does this power have to match for it to be a match? 50%? Nope. It's got to match all of them, right? And so this one is important for that reason. But, I mean, you've got people in prison with 666 tattooed to their knuckles and all kinds of stuff. People get all excited about this one. But here we go. Here's wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Hey, that could be as simple as this. Humans were created on the 6th day of creation. And if you put human beings in the place of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, 666 in the place of God. But I think there's a more direct application. You see, in the donation of Constantine, the title for the Pope is Vicarius Filii Dei. If you take not just in the donation of Constantine, but in hundreds of Catholic documents. And if you take the numerical value, because in Latin numerals, letters have numerical value, some of them. A V is a 5, I is a 1, C is 100, A 0, R 0, I is 1, V 5, S 0, that's 112. Feli, F 0, I 1, L 50, I 1, I 1, 53. Day, D 500, E 0, I 1, 501, total them up, 666. The title of the King of the North in the donation in Constantine and hundreds of other documents totals up to the numerical value of 666. And it actually, in several other languages that they've used for his title, match as well. It's crazy. Somebody said, oh, Ronald Reagan, the form of his name was 666. Simple question. Was he around at the breakup of the Roman Empire? No. Did he survive till the coming of Jesus? No. It wasn't Ronald Reagan. Somebody said Gorbachev did. Well, was he around at the breakup of Rome? No. He might make it to the coming of Jesus. He's still alive, last I knew. But he doesn't match. He wasn't around at the time of Rome, the breakup of Rome. So only this power matches. Then it gets the dragon's throne. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So Rome, the dragon, gives papal Rome their titles and their seat or capital, the throne. Now, in Revelation 12, it says, and the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. Somebody might be saying, well, the dragon in Revelation is really Satan. And ultimately it is. All right? But when it talks about Satan attacking Jesus when he was born, did Satan literally attack Jesus, or did he use Roman soldiers to kill the babies in Bethlehem? Yeah, it was Roman soldiers. When Jesus dies on the cross, was it Satan using his own bare hands to put Jesus on the cross? No, it was Roman soldiers. So Satan is working through Rome to do what he wants, and it's Rome that gives the capital over to the papal system. Take a look. At LaBianca, professor of history, University of Rome, says, to the succession of the Caesars came the successions of the pontiffs in Rome. When Constantine left Rome, he gave his seat to the pontiff. So yes, the Vatican is in what city? Rome. Now, notice the name he's using for the Pope. Pontiff. Do you know where that name came from? Tiberius Caesar. He got more than the capital of the Roman Empire. He got the title of the Caesar. Now, what's especially important, this is Tiberius Caesar. This is the Caesar who is in charge when Jesus is killed. All right? When Jesus was asked, should we pay taxes or not? He said, give me a coin. Whose picture's on it? Take a look at that. He was not a really beautiful character. And they usually tried to make him look good, so I wonder what he really looked like. You flip the coin over, and there's his mother on the back of it, but look at his title, Pontiff Maxim, Pontiff Maximus. The same title the Pope goes by in Latin. The Pope takes the title of the one that attacks Jesus and ends his earthly ministry. And he takes over the title and puts himself in place of Jesus and attacks Jesus' heavenly ministry and says, you don't go to Jesus for forgiveness, you come to us. Isn't that interesting? Attacking the ministry of Jesus under both systems, political and religious. Wow. I'd sure not use the systems or the artwork and the titles that this system uses. But I'd fire the art department if I was in there. But anyway, marks of identification, we've noticed Calvin, Luther, Wycliffe, the Wesleys, they all taught this, that this papal system is the power being described in prophecy, not Roman Catholic people, many of which are God's true people of faith, okay? Now, let's take a look at another coin. I was amazed when I discovered this coin. You have Pope John 23 on the front of it. He was Pope in 1959. If you want to do the math, that's the year I was born. I've got that coin actually in my briefcase, but anyway. You have a woman holding a cross and a cup on the back of the coin. Now, a woman in Bible prophecy, well, Ephesians 5, that could be the bride, the church. Or in Revelation 12, the pure woman, which is again the church, or it could be Mary, the mother of Jesus, sometimes called the Queen of Heaven. However, there's some hints on this coin that maybe that's not it. Underneath the lady, you notice the term Fides? That's the name of a pagan goddess. Remember, when the league is made, we have a mix happening? We still have the mix on the coin, the name of a pagan goddess. Around the outside edge, it says City del Vaticano, in other words, Vatican City. Look up the word Vaticano or Vatican in a really good dictionary, a collegiate dictionary, and you're going to find that the word Vatican or Vaticano means prophecy. So it's the city of prophecy. And when you have this picture and the words prophecy around the outside with a pagan goddess's name underneath, it's not a good picture. You look in prophecy, you actually find that picture in prophecy, and it's not a good one. You find it in Revelation chapter 17. Let's read what it says, verse 3 and following. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which is full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple with scarlet and adorned with gold and a precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a what? Golden cup full of abominations. Keep that phrase in mind. And filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. All right, in Revelation 12, we have a pure woman who hides in the wilderness trying to hide from persecution. He goes back to the wilderness in Revelation 17, and he finds a woman. She's not hiding from the beast now. She's riding the beast, and her clothing has changed from white to scarlet. Would that be a good or a bad change? The church starts out pure and ends up fallen. Like a woman in white or a woman in scarlet, pure woman, fallen woman. It's the same idea with the church here. It's the same one. She's no longer pure. But what is in the cup? It said it's full of abominations. Well, we go to Ezekiel chapter 8. We can find out what some of these abominations are because it says, So he brought me to the door of the north gate of the Lord's house, and to my dismay, women were sitting there weeping for Tammuz. Then he said to me, Have you seen this, O son of man? Turn again, you will see greater abominations than these. So weeping for Tammuz is abomination. Well, who's he? The sun god sends a beam of light down, hits the goddess of fertility called Ishtar, and she becomes miraculously pregnant, gives a virgin birth to a young man who's now called the son of the sun god, Tammuz. He goes off on a wild boar hunt, is killed. They weep for him for 40 days, and he comes back to life on the spring equinox. Ever heard of Easter named after Ishtar? By the way, I prefer to call it the resurrection season versus the Easter season for that simple reason. Just kind of bothers me on that one. I don't like it being attached to a pagan goddess name. But anyway, but he said there's a greater abomination than this one. What would that be? So he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and there at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of the Lord and their faces towards the east, and they were worshiping the sun towards the east. So what you have happening is to come into the temple, you would be facing west. And they get to the door of the temple, they turn their back on God and worship towards the rising sun. They've turned their back on God. And he called that the greater abomination. What's in the cup? The rising sun. The greater abomination. I'd fire the art team over that one. The art department. You see, when this really hit me, I was hiking the Appalachian Trail as a teenager. I did it 2 years in a row from Georgia to Maryland. It's a 1,000-mile walk, takes 2 months. And as I was walking along, east is off to my right, and I hit this little hilltop chapel. It's logs laid out like pews and 3 crosses. And I stood at the back of that looking past the crosses, and the sun was partway up the sky, and I realized there had been a whole group of Christians gathered there together on what they called Easter morning, worshiping towards the rising sun. That's the first time it ever hit me. I thought, uh-oh, I see the problem. I'm not opposed to resurrection pageants, by the way. I celebrate the resurrection of Jesus when he won over sin and death. But I want to get rid of those pagan things that are attached to it. And if you're in charge of a resurrection pageant, I have a challenge for you. Turn it around. Face the audience west towards the empty tomb. When the sun comes up behind it, illuminates the empty tomb, and you're doing it God's way, but you'll be challenged because you're not doing it right according to tradition. See if I'm not right on that. I dare you. Because we have the league being made. And it was papal-led Christianity that did that league. But they said, no, we're not the Antichrist. The Counter-Reformation came along, and they said, oh, that's all in the past. Alcazar said that. It's future preterism, been futurism with Ribera. Daniel and Revelation, the Antichrist, they're all future. They have nothing to do with what's going on in the world today. Unfortunately, most Christians outside of papal-led Christianity are in one of those 2 camps today. And they miss something in every one of them when they do that. And so just as a very brief overview of tonight, what have we got? In Daniel 11, following Rome, there are 3 phases of conflict between papal-led Christianity and Islam. We have the Crusades with Arab Islam. We have the Reformation, Ottoman Islam. And we have the time of the end with radical Islam. And it's papal-led Christianity versus a radicalized violent Islam all the way through. It's the elephant in the middle of the room. And so now we've clearly identified who the king of the north is. And in our next presentation, we're going to be looking at the role of the U.S. in this growing conflict. And you really don't want to miss this one, because what we started out saying when I started this was future. Now it is already beginning to happen. It's an exciting prophecy. Some people say the U.S. has a role. Some people say it doesn't. We'll have a look at both of those as we go into that presentation on tomorrow evening. So we're really glad you're here. Plan on seeing you again.